How's it going, Andrew?
What's going on, Matt?
Same old, same old, same old.
Well, it's fun having you back after your long adventures out west.
Oh, the long, fun adventures with stories for a lifetime.
I've only heard a couple, so I'm looking forward to... I know those stories, like when I've done travels, people like tell me everything, and you're like, these are just going to have to come out organically as time goes on when I'm inspired to tell them, so I'm excited.
Yep. 7 survived Hideaway Drive 2025.
Well, it seemed like a good trip to help boost the confidence of the low 12. I saw a bunch of newer faces traveling with you guys, which is fun.
Right.
On a brother bonding adventure.
No, it was a really good time. It was really good. It's been just a lot since I got back from it.
The world keeps ticking when you're on vacation. Yeah, I know that goes.
Yeah, it's been a lot. So coming back to work was interesting, and then Zoe's birthday party coming up this weekend. Just a lot going on in my life right now. Feels like I got back home and just got slammed. So
cool. Yeah, I guess my only update for the fans, because you guys know that I like to take on just like a plethora of hobbies outside of Plant Talk, podcast Time for Plants with Matt and Andrew pending. And that stuff is I repaired a bike that I found free on the curb. So now I'm a biker boy, and I've been biking all over the place. On a bicycle.
You're a bicycle enthusiast. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm bike curious right now, so I'm working that out and seeing if I like biking. But it is fun because since I live on a bike, 8-minute bike ride from Lodge, it has been kind of nice as like an alternative, like where I'm like, I just need to pop over and do something, sneak a little exercise in on the way there and back. And it's basically uphill the entire way back. It's bad, but it's a good excuse to go work
both ways. I was waiting for you to try to go that way with it. Uphill both ways.
I would define it as uphill the way back, and the way there it's just potholes. So it's a different different terror on the way down when I'm going down the hill really fast and hitting potholes on a road bike that's got the very thin wheel. I'm like, don't die, don't die, don't die. I'm like weaving, trying to stay alive, trying to sneak past. The route that I take to Lodge is like not bike friendly either. Like no parts out of St. Francis are bike friendly. So it's just trying not to get murdered by a semi coming up from all these factories and just like weaving around, trying to get to back roads to sneak over, but only takes me 8 minutes. Just got to stay alive for 8 minutes.
Yeah, 8 minutes should be long enough for you to be able to stay focused too and not let the ADHD take over, right?
My focus is pretty tight because the fear is always there. The fear keeps me level. Doctors always want to be prescribing Adderall, but have they ever thought of prescribing fear? Because prescribing fear works pretty well.
I don't know if that's FDA approved.
Yeah, I think the long-term side effects are kind of rough, but short lifespan, higher blood pressure.
Oh my God.
Mood swings.
That'd be great.
Adrenaline,
for
fatigue.
Fear.
Yeah, have you considered just being more scared? That'd keep you a lot focused in. An ADHD person's never more focused than when he's in like a haunted house, waiting for the jump scare.
Complete rabbit hole here, but I mean there is healthy effects of fear. There's an entire book written about the positive aspects of fear called "The Gift of Fear" by a well-known psychologist whose name is escaping me right now. I got it right here. Oh, Gavin DeBecker. He's also a security specialist.
In small doses. Long-term fear, naughty. Yeah. Long-term fear, bad.
Right.
Short-term, it's kind of like sitting in a sauna. Short-term benefits, great. If you sit in one too long, though, maybe not so good.
Yeah, that's fair.
Once again, for our fans, neither Matt nor myself are doctors, so take us with a grain of salt.
Right. Not take any advice we give, but if you have ADHD, be scared more often.
Yeah, fear is great. Speaking of fear, we have a fearful topic today. Me and Matt are talking about another heady topic, which I think people seem to enjoy. Our last episode, breaking down the poem by Joseph Ford Newton, on the builders, so we decided we were going to get poetic again so you guys can maintain your fear as we go into this episode.
Yeah, right. Hit that music and then let's get at it.
Loosen up your ties and roll up your sleeves. It's time for Fellowship with Matt and Andrew. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are not necessarily the views and opinions of the Grand Lodge of Wisconsin or any other Grand Lodge or any appended body.
All right, so today we're taking a deep dive.
Right. Real quick before we get into that, I do have to say something. If anybody who's listening has not tried the new Jack Daniel's Blackberry yet, you are missing out.
So our newest sponsor, Jack Daniel's Blackberry, along with Teddy Wedger's Pasties in Madison. We've been collecting.
Oh, that would be a great combination. I like that one.
We've been collecting unpaid sponsorships, just shameless plugging things we like.
I'm sorry, I had to plug that one because I'm currently enjoying a little bit of it, and yeah, it's really good.
Getting you in the mood for poetry. Nothing gets you in the mood for poetry more than Jack Daniel's Blackberry.
Right. Well, on that note, let's talk about the Regius poem.
Yep. So today we decided to take a dip down like what is the old, quote-unquote, oftentimes called or assumed to be one of the oldest known Masonic documents. It's called the Regius poem, Regius Manuscript, and sometimes called the Halliwell Manuscript. Essentially, it's been dated to a poem that was written about 1390, so it's old. It's an old boy. It's written in Middle English, so it's kind of hard to read, and I've had it translated into modern English, so I might try a bit of Middle English, but for the most part, we'll do it in modern because I want to save our listeners.
Yeah, no, let's stick to modern.
Yeah, but essentially, it's called the Regius Manuscript because it was actually a part of the Royal Library of England for a long time. It was donated to the British Museum by King George II in 1757, and it actually, funny enough, it was misfiled for a little bit short of 100 years, and it was put in the category of poems on moral duties. And so at the time, no one recognized it as potentially Masonic.
Fair, but I mean, I don't know if I would say that was miscategorized. That's appropriate for some of it, at least, for it to be filed under that.
I think, yeah, I don't agree with it necessarily being, I guess misfile is the wrong word. I guess what I'm trying to say is they didn't really realize that it could potentially have been of Masonic significance until a guy named James Halliwell rediscovered it and recognized that it probably had Masonic character in 1840. So that's why it's also sometimes known as the Halliwell Manuscript. Author? Unknown. We have no idea who wrote it. The general assumption is that it was probably written by a priest or a monk who was probably well acquainted with both the building craft and the moral teachings of the time. You can tell just because the use of Latin throughout, which was a popular trope, and some of the techniques and the time period, that it probably would have been someone in the clergy who had written it down. And so, yep.
You're talking about a time period where a lot of people still can't read or write. So, yeah, it's usually somebody from the clergy that would be doing something like this.
And from my understanding, when I was doing a little bit of research, the reason they think that too is there's a style that clergy likes to use, so you can kind of sniff it out from that time period too, based on how it's written. But it's fairly long, so we're not going to read the whole thing, so you guys are welcome. It's technically 794 lines, and it's broken into a couple different things. So it has the legendary history of the craft, which you'll see if you've ever looked at Anderson's Constitutions. We like to say we came back from, Adam and Eve or whatever we came up with. And this one, they put it back to Egypt and Euclid and King Athelstan and a bunch of stuff. And after they go through this folk history or mythical history of the craft, it goes into what's called the old charges, which is what I want to focus on today.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the important part. That's the real meat and potatoes of it for us, and
I think that's the stuff, like the folk history is just fun lore. Like I enjoyed reading it, and I just rolled my eyes as somebody who's a fan of history. I'm like, oh my God. All right, guys. But it was popular back in the time too for guilds of all sorts to create a mythological history to some famous thing or person. It was in vogue. So it's not unusual, but essentially the old charges was broken out into 15 what they call articles, which has to do with governance. And we're going to maybe look at one of the articles, but a lot of the articles, if you read the whole thing, are like, you're like, yeah, this is masonry. Like, you can see how they're like structuring stuff. And then they break it into 15 points. Yep.
Right. Well, and the 15 articles are very, very much so directed at like the operations of operative masonry, right? Like and how you should be taking apprentices on and stuff like that. Whereas the 15 points delve more into like moral character and how to live a good life.
Yep. And what a mason is expected, the character of a mason looks like, which is also very Masonic. But yeah, so basically the points are moral. The articles are governing of like the craft trade. And what's interesting is when I was reading a book on the Shaw Lodges, they were talking about how since a lot of these guilds didn't have like a formalized, centralized structure, sometimes these types of documents were just passed around as like best practices so that like individual guilds could be like, maybe we should pick up these best practices so our boys stop being so wild, or we should put up like a higher form so it's like an idea flowing around. So we're going to focus on a couple of those today that I thought were interesting, and yeah, I think it's going to be fun. You ready for some Old English?
Wait. So I was actually going to suggest we could launch a Patreon where people could actually pay to hear Andrew read all 794 lines in Middle English.
It'd be like a 15-hour, because like I'd have to be like, wait, I don't think that's how to say that. Hold on. Hic incipitis constitutiones artis geometria secundum Euclideum. That's the first line we're going to get into.
Oh, boy.
It's going to be a pain. We'll get through it together. So the first one I wanted to talk about is the opening line. Every good story starts at the beginning, right? And the opening line of the manuscript immediately, like is very Masonic, aligns us with geometry being the basis of our art. So the first line, with no uncertain terms, goes right into saying, this is a geometric thing. We're geometry peeps. I'll just do one sentence of the Old English just for funs. Hic incipitium... Wait, hic... You know what? I'm going to go into not the Latin part. Whose whole both well read and loke may find wint ye old book. O greedy lordies and eke ladies that haid money children, ye fair and ye wisey. So anyways, that's the Old English, but to translate it, yeah, on our Patreon.
Whoever will both, right. Whoever will both well read and look, he may find written in old book of great lords and also ladies that had many children together certainly, and had no income to keep them with. That would be, I believe, the line you were going for. That's the translation I have, at least.
And then it says, neither town nor field nor in forest counsel together they take to ordain these children without great distress. And so it starts by saying, here, in the beginning of the Constitution of the arts of geometry according to Euclid. So it immediately goes, this is, the starting is about geometry, and then it moves into saying that the importance, right? Whoever can both is well read and look, he may find written in this book of great lords and ladies that had many children together and had no income to support them, neither town nor field nor forest, a counsel together they can take, to ordain for children's sake they might best lead their life without great distress and care or strife. So they're basically saying, hey, if you're trying to find a way to elevate your children, there's a good art for you, and it's based in geometry. That's how I take it.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I'm like stuck on the fact that like translations can be so fun and different, because you had neither in town nor field nor forest, and I have neither in town nor field nor enclosed wood.
Yeah, it's like this opening being like, you guys want something lit? And they go, but they immediately are setting us up to go, this is not something that is of a light or trifling circumstances, right? They're saying like, this is a heady and this is a high art of geometry, which is based on Euclid. That was not only a practical skill, but when you compare it to Euclid, you're implying that you're taking from the Euclidean system, saying that it's a sacred science and like a gateway. So you're immediately aligning yourselves with the ideas of Euclid. And then I feel like it's pointing out that it's an honest craft, right? It's good. It's a good thing to do for the livelihood, not only of your children and all that good stuff.
Well, yeah, it's a way to ensure if you could get your children into, operative masonry, right? Well, I mean, we shouldn't even say children. If you could get your sons into operative masonry at that time, excuse me, they would be able to most likely live a better life than you did, because they might be under cleaner circumstances, less likely to get diseases, and have a career, so to speak, even though it was nothing like, I mean, it was a career, right? Let's be honest. It was a career, and it's something that could lead to a better life than you may have had. So it was a way of ensuring your children's future.
And it says, without great distress, care, or strife, and how they might best lead their life, meaning like, yeah, this is a path. This is a unique and good and high-minded path that offers, good results for a family who, what does it say? That have no income to support with them. So if you need a good career, here's a good career. Why do you think that they immediately emphasize Euclid and geometry?
Well, because geometry is the basis of masonry.
I think probably
plain and simple. I feel like that's fairly obvious, but I don't know.
And with the Euclid thing, I think that's also them hinting at that folk history that they're going to go into, tying us to Euclid. So they're immediately calling out like their mythological figure. They're like, this is of geometry and that cool guy. And you're like, oh.
Well, right. I mean, when you think about like geometry as a science, like Euclid is probably the name that comes to mind the most, right? As being the person that really started to put things together and figure stuff out, and potentially got those ideas from somewhere else, and his name ended up being attached to him or whatever. But that's one of those names where like you say that and you're like, people are like, oh yeah, that's that guy that like, proves stuff in geometry, right?
Yeah. And I mean, it shows that right from the beginning that geometry was held in high esteem. The highest, it's the first sentence. They're like, geometry, baby, don't miss it.
Right.
And, and it's cool because it's a symbol that we still interact with in the speculative trade as well.
Geometry should be, if you really look at it and you look at like the mathematics of geometry and where you can just find it like everywhere in the world, right? With like the golden ratio and symmetry and the art of building things. And even if you break it down to, faces and stuff that we, of people that we tend to consider more attractive and stuff, they're more symmetrical and they tend to adhere more to the golden ratio and stuff like that. So like geometry flows through our world and everything we do.
And not to mention, I think that from the onset of Masonry, the obsession with morality comes from the obsession in geometry, because geometry is not discovering anything, it's proving something, right? And so when they say there can be some absolute truths, geometry is an example people can point to. You're like, you can do whatever you want and say whatever you want about this cube, but the geometry is still going to be the same. Like, the math is going to still line up if it's correct, right? There's an absolute truth to be found in geometry to a certain extent. I'm sure that some physicists might argue with me there, but a closer truth to an absolute truth. And I think that's why sometimes there's this emphasis of morality that comes along with the masonry trade, or the Masonic trade, because of its obsession with geometry, which is a truthful science.
Right. It's truthful and useful, and forget all those quantum physicists who, try to prove that everything we know is wrong because of everything else that they can't prove actually exists. So whatever. But
for practical, regular people who don't live in who've gone deep into the numbers, for the most part, it's a fairly truthful science, I would say.
Right.
Relatively truthful.
Well, and I don't think a lot of times, and I don't want to get hung up on geometry for too long because we've talked about geometry quite a bit, but I don't think people actually like comprehend how much they use it in their day-to-day life, right?
Driving.
Even driving, parallel parking, especially, looking at your angles and figuring out distances and everything else, and as a hunter sitting in a tree stand, that's a regular occurrence for me to use it because of the Pythagorean theorem and everything else, and a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So, and trying to figure out my angle and how long my shot actually is. So yeah, it's something that well, like I said before, truly intersects our daily lives, right?
Yeah, and it's something that I feel like we take for granted. And I think that any Mason who invests even a minimum amount of time, especially the call out to Euclid, of getting a basic understanding of Euclidean geometry, I feel like it opens up a lot of the craft, because right away, in the first sentence, they're talking about Euclid. So that was in the mind of a lot of Masonic thinkers. I'm sure not all, but many would think about the geometry, and we're probably pulling from similar sources, being Euclid and Euclidean geometry. And so it kind of unlocks a lot. And I think we've been talking about doing a series down the road on some basics of Euclidean geometry, which could be fun. I'm sure our viewers, we can keep them even more fearful, but
we're going to take you back to high school. Woo!
I bet you guys thought you were done with high school. Not no more.
Well, and so at this point when this was written, yeah, they started to outline like moral duties and stuff like that. But ultimately what they're starting out with is they're talking about the art of building things, right? What other form of mathematics or science would you hold in higher regard than geometry? Everything you're doing when you're constructing the things that they were building had to have a basis in, the principles of geometry, right? So they especially couldn't get away from it. Their entire careers were based on it.
Yep, and compared to other building crafts, like if you were a small-time builder, not a cathedral builder, the amount of excellence you needed in your geometry to not have these types of buildings collapse was at the highest level. So you had to operate with geometrical principles at the highest level to be successful in that type of stonework. Whereas if you're like a local builder, yeah, you can get away with some basics, sure. But if you're trying to build something at the level that they were working on, it had to be done at the highest level that they had available from geometric principles.
For sure. For sure.
Let's take a look at the third point. So the third point is funny because we always wonder why Masonry is so secretive. And, we're not a secret society. We're a society that has trade secrets. This deals with the trade secrets and the importance of keeping secrecy. The first line is, the third punctus hic scinini. The third point must be known, that the prentice be of lawful kin, and his master, his counsel, he keep close, and his fellows with his good purpose. The privacies of the chamber he shall tell no man, nor whatever they do in the lodge. Whatsoever thou hear or see them do, tell it to no man, wheresoever thou go. The counsel of the hall and also of the bower. Keep it well to great honor, lest it should bring thee to blame, and bring the craft into great shame. Sounds like some parts of our charges.
Right. Oddly, you started reading that. I'm looking at the third article going, this isn't what the third article says. I forgot that you had said third point.
What is how does your translation read? I know it's a little different, and without reading it, I mean, they're both kind of just trying to get it as close to layman.
They were pretty close. This one was almost word for word. Like the other one, it was like, where they said forest and enclosed wood. It was just stuff like that.
Yeah, but this one's pretty direct. Like, right off the bat, it goes, I'm going to tell you guys, you apprentices and you masons, keep the privacies of the chamber, of the lodge, and the council of the hall and the bower. So it's not only like about secrecy, which it obviously is, but it's also about protecting the reputation of the fraternity as well, which I'm curious, what do you think they were trying to protect to say, lest it should bring thee to blame?
So I've been pondering on this one because, like, I understand, like, keeping, like, trade secrets at that time, right? Because you don't want everybody to know it, because then anybody could, try to execute it and blah, 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 right? But the whole the blame thing and everything else, and I'm wondering if they mean if somebody made a mistake, right? Don't air it out there for everybody to know. If the mistake got corrected and everything else, you don't need to lay the blame at his feet, because it makes all of us look bad, right? He screwed up, but the rest of us don't need to look bad because one guy put a stone in the wrong place and this wall collapsed, right?
Yeah. Well, and I feel like it helps because at first I feel like and probably some of our listeners, my first thought goes to are they trying to cover up nefarious deeds? And I'm but that doesn't fit with the greater poem about morality and stuff, right? And so
right.
I feel like it means I think I think you're right that we have to put it through the lens of a craftsperson. If I was at work and I got on the phone with a customer and I just started complaining about how crappy my coworkers were, it puts the whole corporation in a bad light when it's not necessarily fair. You know what I mean? So it's don't just go, airing everyone's dirty laundry to everybody else because it brings bad looks to the entire craft. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly. Or, somebody cut a stone wrong. You don't need to be going home from work and telling all your buddies at the pub that aren't Masons, hey, this guy screwed up pretty bad, and then having them all think less of Masons on the whole, right? I really feel like that's what they were probably going for. Now, if you wanted to expound on that point, it could be everybody makes mistakes, so, don't hang someone out to dry when they do, right? Figure out how it can be corrected and move forward.
Yeah, and it's they're hey, we want to be, keeping our honor, meaning we're the highest trade too, I think is also could be involved. We are the best. If you're giving away our trade secrets, you could, put us in a bad spot on top of that. I mean, part of me is fascinated because I feel in old school guilds and stuff, I wouldn't say nefarious, but I think there was a little bit more of let's keep it in-house type of antics going on for sure, where they're we'll handle it in-house, which is not as necessarily as prevalent in modern masonry to that extent. But I feel sometimes when I think about the time period being the 1300s, I feel law and order was oftentimes imposed by your community rather than necessarily a very sophisticated legal system. So they're probably hey, if something goes wrong and we're working on it in-house, don't go and spread it around. If we're trying to discipline someone or working on something, if you spread it around, they're going to judge us all by one bad apple and we're going to work it out together, which is not something I necessarily condone, but it's something that I could see from this time period.
Oh yeah, for sure. 100%. And I feel that's exactly what this is alluding to. Just, get it taken care of. I feel if it was something nefarious, then they probably would have been we're not even going to handle this in-house. We're going to hang this person out to dry to, you know what I mean? To show that we understand when it's crossed a certain line, right?
But at least then it's the craft's response, not individuals, right? If the craft delivers justice to the population, it's not being they're saying, hey, we're not condoning this, but we need to figure out how it's going to be handled.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I just do feel almost everything was more hardcore back then, too. And it also protects, I feel when they say lead the craft to blame, it could be protecting it from misunderstandings, external misunderstanding, too. Meaning, if you don't understand the context, you might have, a bad opinion for no reason type of thing, too.
Right, exactly. No, that all jives.
But yeah, it's interesting that it's also another thing that, a couple hundred years ago seems to be still a popular trend of the operative guilds that we still maintain, and it kind of helps fill in that gap where we always like to claim, yep, this has been passed down, this type of culture, and it's still here today.
Right. Well, and there is very much so in trade unions and stuff like that, a lot of the let's just handle this in-house type of mentality that continues. So
cool. Well, now that we talked about treating things in house, let's talk about ethical conduct. Let's go to the positive.
Which one are we going to?
So we're going to line 775, which is also sometimes called the Urbanitatis poem. Urbanitatis. Okay, just no one judge my pronunciation. But it's basically talking about how masonry, being a good mason, goes beyond the worksite and into the general society, which I enjoy. It starts when thou meetest a worthy man, cape and hood thou hold not on. All right, I'll read it. You want to read the translation? You found it?
I'm trying to figure out where you're at because I don't have lines marked out in the document I'm looking at.
So it starts with, when thou meetest a worthy man, capen that hood thou hold not on. In church, in market, or in the gate, do not do him reverence after his state. If thou goes with a worthy man, then thyself thou art one. Let thy foremost shoulder follow his back, for that is nurture without lack. When he doth speak, hold thy still. That's my problem. When he hath done, say for thy will. In thy speech, that thou be discreet, and what thou sayest, consider thee well. But deprive thou not him his tale, neither at the wine nor at the ale.
Is this one of the points?
I think it's
or used somewhere else.
I think it might be used somewhere else. It's the Urbanitius poem. Urbanatitus.
I don't have that in here.
Let me see if I can find
Actually, no, I do. It's the very last part of a section that I have that is entitled, in this translation, that they kind of broke it out into sections. That is the very last stanza or whatever you want to call it of the section entitled An Instruction on Good Manners.
Yeah, so this is a good one. I picked this one partially because I think it's directed right at me. because it feels like that. I know that worshipful brother Jeff's probably listening and being like, "See, Andrew, this is what I'm talking about. Stop interrupting me." But
another.
So this one's hard for me to understand because some parts of it I feel like are from a, it's hard to understand the context, but it's like, when thou meetest a worthy man, cap and hood hold not thou on. So meaning don't cover your face, don't try to hide. That's how I interpret it.
Right.
Be genial and thing, whether you're in church, market, or in the gate. So wherever you might be, do him reverence after his state, which seems to be referencing, treat him in accord to his station, right? Which is we talk in Masonry quite a bit about, especially in that time where it's more of a stratified society. If thou goest with a worthier man, so if he's above your station, then thyself thou art one. So if you're hanging out with someone who is of a high station, you should try to hold yourself to a high station, it sounds like.
Well, I feel like that's like to put it in a different frame, that's the whole that he who walks with wise men is wise himself, or however that one goes.
I could see that.
Blanking on.
Yeah, and then it goes, what does this mean? Let thy foremost shoulder follow his back. So walk behind him. I guess don't walk in front of him.
Right. Yeah. So your lead shoulder, right? If you're kind of walking weird, I guess, but let your foremost shoulder follow his back. So yeah, your frontmost part should be behind him, right?
I'm starting to think about this as all about how to conduct yourself with someone of a higher station. So if you meet someone who's of a high station, someone of status or someone of high respect, you should take off your hat or hood, right? Which is I feel like that's always been a good sign of manners, right? To show that you're, of good manners. Treat him with accordance to his decorum. Practice regular decorum, which I think when it says decorum, I don't know if this is necessarily trying to be fake, or I don't know what people would say these days, be like a bootlicker, right? I think it's just try to hold a good conscience and good propriety, right?
So, I mean, I think it's, acting with manners, right? If you're with somebody who's, outranks you, so to speak, to give yourself the opportunity to learn from them, right? But I think you could, again, even expound on that to if you're just with somebody you respect and you admire and you look up to, learn from him, right? Or them, and let them tell their stories. Don't deprive him his tale, right?
Yeah.
Let him tell his stories. You don't know, and listen, right? You don't know what you're going to be able to learn or gather from that. So let him tell his tale. Let him, don't interrupt him. Let him speak. Let him share those pearls with you, right? So even if you take it out of the context of somebody that's a higher station than you, maybe it's somebody that you consider more intelligent than yourself,
or someone you respect.
Or
yeah.
he's older, he's been around longer, he has tales that contain wisdom in them, right? That kind of thing.
Yeah, it's kind of like if thou goest with a worthier man, then thou art one. Then thyself thou art one. Like if you're walking with someone with a higher station, don't try to outshine them. Try to actually learn from them, because you're not really competing, which I feel like is a very Masonic lesson. And it's also like good. Like it'd be like if you walked up and gave a CEO of your company knucks, they'd be like, "What?" Like it's probably just a good idea. Like let thou foremost shoulder fall behind his. Walk slightly behind them. It's polite. It shows that you're giving deference. And then it says, when he doth speak, hold thy still. Like we said, don't interrupt. Listen. Like you're saying. It also shows patience, which is a virtue, right? And purpose.
Right.
And in thy speech, thou be discreet. So meaning like only add to the conversation. Don't try to steal the conversation. And
right. Think about what you're going to say, right? And what thou sayest, consider thee well.
Yeah. Speak wisely. Don't say something stupid in front of your CEO, right? Like, but deprive thou not him for his tale. So don't cut him off. Neither at wine nor at ale, even if you're drinking. Even if you're drunk, don't do it. So, I mean, it's basically saying don't be a loudmouth. Don't try to take the lead. Respect others. Speak with purpose. And for heaven's sake, fucking let the guy finish his story.
Right.
Yeah, but I think that's a good lesson. I think, even though we're not as in much a strictly stratified society, that this could have been a way that you actually survive back then. You know what I mean? And create a good reputation for the fraternity and the guild itself, to be like, hey, this is how you keep yourself in good graces with someone who could be your boss, could be the guy who hired you guys to do the work. If like you're going to do that.
Or to teach you something.
Yep.
I mean, one of the lines in there is, well, this book to know and read, right? So, like, he's a book of experience. Like, let him tell his tale and learn from it.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's an interesting one to think about. And I think it's a good lesson. Like, even though it's from a different time, I think it definitely is good food for thought. The next line that I'm going to go to is the 15th article. So we're going to the administrative stuff.
Jumping back. You're just jumping all over the place here, huh?
Yeah, it's not going in chronological.
15th article there.
So this one's going to speak about the paying of wages and just work, which is, we love talking about wages and work, don't we?
I'll read my translation for this one.
You got to read the old-timey one first.
No, I'm not going to try. I don't have the old-timey in front of me. If you want to try, you can.
The 15 article maketh an end. For the master he is a friend, to teachen him so that for no envy. There's the old English. Now give us the one we can understand. I hate that you have the soundboard.
You deserve to golf clap for that one. The 15th article maketh an end, for to the master he is a friend, to teach him so that for no man, no false maintenance he take him upon, nor maintain his fellows in their sin, for no good that he might win, nor no false oath suffer him to make, for dread of their souls' sake, lest it would turn the craft to shame, and himself to very much blame.
So my translation's so much different.
Really?
Yeah, mine says the 15th article makes an end. That to no master he is a friend. That to the master he is a friend. To teach them, so that from no envy, nor thieves, nor heresy, they cause not the craft shame, but be steadfast, and keep its name. Also that he be not outrageous, nor too proud, nor covetous, but steadfast and discreet, and also honest. It is to do. It's like an HR policy.
Interesting. Right. Don't screw up.
It's like telling the master...
And don't cover up for somebody who is screwing up.
It's like telling the master that he needs to be teaching not only the craft, but also ethics to avoid envy and the shameful behavior. So now the craft, teaching the craft works so he avoids envy because he's sharing his knowledge, but also teaching ethics to avoid shameful behavior. So it's like a warning against pride and greed.
Well, and it's also a warning against, like, I feel like turning a blind eye, right? Because at least in my translation, there's a sentence that says, nor maintain his fellows in their sin, right? So don't allow or encourage somebody to continue bad behavior.
Yeah, it is like being like, set a good example. It's good leadership training right here. It's
and redirect somebody if they're on the wrong course.
It's almost like to me, like what I'm reading the underlining is like the master and apprentice relationship, and like the master's responsibility to the students is to build trust, not envy or, bad people. This to build a trusting and good relationship. It's like a pushback against being a bad teacher or like a tyrant of sorts. But you have to teach your students not to fall into envy, theft, heresy, or other bad behavior. Or
even just, being lazy or not paying them as much attention as they should to their job or doing sloppy work, right? Don't let them get away with that.
Yeah, that ultimately the master's job is to uphold the honor and steadfastly the honor of the fraternity. And and don't be too outrageous. Don't be hot-tempered. I think outrageous in this context does mean like be like a crazy leader. Don't be too proud or too jealous. Like, be honorable.
Right. I mean, to the master, he is a friend, right? So obviously you spend a lot of time with your apprentices. So it becomes more than a purely work relationship, right? A lot of times you're going to end up being friends or whatever, or even like potentially form like a father-son type bond or something like that, right? And so you have to remember that in that relationship, you're still responsible for teaching them things.
Yeah, and in an honest way, not because you're trying to hold back something because you're greedy and you're trying to keep your station. It to me, this is like a call to mentorship that we still talk about in modern masonry. To be like, you're the master. Like, this is a really important tenet for you to be. This tenet to you will be your best friend to a certain extent as well. Like, teach them. Be a good instructor. Hold them accountable. Because, like, if you think about it in the craft, you should lead with virtue, not vanity. I feel like this is 100% talking about leaders who like to wear the badge of a leader more than they like to do the job, right? Because they just like the clout. It's like, no, lead with virtue, not vanity. And teach these men to be loyal and to be of good reputation and to be good men, and actually instruct them in the arts of the craft, which includes integrity and also restraint.
I actually do want to, I can't remember if it was in your translation or not, but I do want to bring up two lines that were in my translation that I'm interested to hear what you think they're referring to with it is. And that's the, nor no false oath suffer him to make for dread of their soul's sake.
I'm just trying to figure out where this is in the actual. I'm reading like the old English, and I'm like, where are they getting this from? Cause they not the craft to shame, no thieves, no heresy, and to stable and keep his name. I feel like your translation's taking liberties.
Maybe. I mean, we're on the 15th article, right? That's what you said.
Let me see. I'm going to pull up I have a version of the exact manuscript. No, this could take too long to find. Just repeat the line to me and I'll give you my take. I don't know if it's real, but it's still going to be worth it.
I know. I feel like it was a weird line to be in here. That's why I wanted to talk about it. Nor no false oath suffer him to make for dread of their soul's sake. So are they referring to don't let him break an oath he made, or don't let him take an oath under false pretenses, or like
what's the
make
line?
Sure to tell him
what's the line before that line?
For no good that he might win. So it's, which I feel like there's a semicolon after that line, so obviously we're starting something new, right? So I don't feel like that relates to that line. But if you wanted to go into the 2 lines before that, it would be, nor maintain his fellows in their sin, for no good that he might win. And then, nor no false oath suffer him to make, for dread of their soul's sake.
It seems to me like that might be what they're referencing here with the heresy, where they're like, don't let them sign up for something that is a bad oath to make. He shall maintain his fellow in wrongdoing. I'm finding another version of this too. Oh my God. The 15 article is the last, for he has become a friend to the master, to teach him that not for anyone shall he maintain his fellows in wrongdoing, nor commit perjury for the sake of his soul. Now you're going to freaking make me find the original translation. God.
No. Let's not even go there. Let's put a pin in this. I'm serious. Let's put a pin in this. Let's grab like 3 different translations in the original, and let's come back to this specific article, in the future, and see what we can come up with between putting 3 different translations together and comparing it to the original.
Okay, that sounds good. All right, we'll move on.
I think that could be interesting to digest at a later time.
I agree. So let me see here. So the next line I wanted to go to is it's the 4 crowned martyrs.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, boy. Let me see here.
I have a summary of it.
Let me see. I didn't realize how challenging this document was to work around. Here's something on them. Essentially, what it says is, there once were men upon this earth who loved God well and held holy church. Such men were they that loved God truly, and for his love suffered cruel deeds. They would not make any images, for no reward might they gain, but keep themselves from that sin and serve God with wisdom and skill. And this is a reference to earlier, they talk about these 4 martyrs who were asked by a Roman emperor to make a false idol based on their beliefs, but they were going to pay them to do it, right? And instead of doing that, they decided not to keep themselves in, spiritual order with their beliefs, and were then killed for it.
Right. There it is. The art of the 4 crowned ones. I was just trying to get to the actual part.
What do you got? What is your translation?
It's long.
Let me see.
It's long.
That is why we keep these articles and these points well together, as the holy martyrs 4, that in the craft were great honor. They were good masons on earth shall go, as good masons on earth shall go. Graver and image makers they were also. For they were workmen of the best. The emperor had to them great liking. He willed of them an image to make, that might be worshipped for his sake. Such monuments he had in his day, to turn people from Christ's law. But they were steadfast in Christ's law, and to their craft without doubt. They loved God and all his lore, and were in his service evermore. True men they were in that day, and they lived well in God's law. They thought no monuments for to make, for no good that they might take. To believe on that monument for their God, they would not do so. Though he was furious, they would not forsake their faith. And believe on his false law, the emperor let take them soon anon, and put them deep in prison. The more solely he punished them in their place, the more joy was to them of Christ's grace. And it goes on to say they were executed. So right. I found that this was interesting because it seems to be like a proto version of the story of the third degree, where it's right. Kind of, because there's nothing in this article that even resembles anything that we might recognize as the third degree. But this seems to be like that idea that like Masons are to stay true to their values and stay true to their oaths and to their integrity, however they view it.
I would agree. I also find it interesting that having such vast disparities on the 15th article, we were almost word for word that translation.
I think it's just that I'm jumping around. It's so hard because like all the documents that I have on this are like legitimately scanned books that I have to clip through these scanned books.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I mean,
So
I feel like this is a deep symbolic thing that's been within the craft for a long time.
For a little bit of history, and you guys are going to have to deal with my pronunciation on this one. In the little summary of the article I have up of this, that part comes right after the 15 articles and points. It's titled The Four Crowned Ones, according to this translation. And this is apparently in reference to Severus, or Severus, however you want to say it, Severian, Carpophorus, and Victorian, who were martyred by Roman Emperor Diocletian. Since nobody in early times knew their names, Pope Melchiades, whatever, proclaimed that they would be celebrated on the same day as 5 other martyrs, which was Claudius, Castor, Symphorium, Nicostratus, and Simplicius, who were ordered by Emperor Diocletian to be sealed in lead cases and dropped in the sea because they refused to sculpt him an idol. The Four Crowned Ones, which relates to part of their story.
I think this is cool because I think it's another reminder of like we talk about like moral courage or standing up for, you know, what you think is right or wrong. If you look at it like the grander scheme, to your own peril is what this kind of says.
Right. Man, could you imagine being sealed in a lead case and dropped to the bottom of the sea? Ugh, what a terrible way to go.
Every martyr has like the worst story. They're like lit on fire in a bowl. And you're like, what? Like a metal bowl. We lit them on fire. We melted them. And you're like, what?
Yeah. Why did they come up with such cruel and unusual ways to kill people back then?
It's because it's before the internet. They're bored. They do the evilest stuff they could think of to stay entertained. They didn't have like football to watch. They didn't have TV.
Oh, that's terrible. That's terrible, but probably correct. Now we can just watch AI created videos of the same thing.
Yeah, or you could just have them make it up for us. But yeah, I think the Regius poems, one thing that I realized, because I thought, you know, I read the poem like a week ago, then I was revisiting it this evening, and it's actually really hard to talk about because I feel like there's so much to unpack. You really have to like, I thought it'd be easier to hop into this. It's kind of tough. Like it's not only it's sorting out the translation irregularities because I was just hopping through like 7 or 8 websites right now. There's so many different, they're all different. And I'm like, oh my God. So it takes a little more skill to actually kind of walk through it. But it is interesting that so many of these teachings are very recognizable to things that we're taught in the craft today.
Oh yeah, very much so. I mean, interpreting poetry is not one of my favorite things to do. So, you know, translated Middle English poetry definitely is is an adventure as far as I'm concerned, which is why I like the article I found. I mean, I've read the whole thing and I went through it, but when I needed to find a you know, quick little synopsis of it again in my head, the article I found on durandlodge.com, it's got a summary right at the beginning of like all 15 articles and all 15 points where it just literally breaks them each down into like a sentence. Like, here's what this entire section says, minus the art of poetry.
See, where I'm getting sussed out is, so most of my translations are from a website called mastermason.com, and which is already sus to me. But then the article was written by the
really? Why?
The article was posted in 1996 from the from Victoria Lodge of Education and Research in British Columbia, and it's written by very worshipful Brother Art Scott, Senior Deacon, and it looks like it was hand-typed on his typewriter. And so I'm just curious if there's a little bit more of artistic license coming from him translating it manually, pre-internet, from one to the other, which is the interesting game of when you're trying to look at primary, quote-unquote, more, like, you know, old sources, is that you got to kind of be a little more careful with how they do it.
I just finally scrolled down to the bottom of this one from Durand Lodge. And under references, it says the modern English translation was made by Roderick Baxter, past master of Quattar Coronati Lodge, number 2076 and was reproduced in Mackey's Encyclopedia of Freemasonry.
That might be the best place for us to get it. We might come back to some more points in this article later.
The translation I have is the one that's also in Mackey's. So
that's gonna be a nice one to have. I mean,
that's interesting.
It's hard being when you think about what historians all do all day is just unravel these things.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, we might come back in a later episode and look at different parts of this one, and we'll get our translations organized. But the last thing I wanted,
it would be fun to sit there maybe at some point and go through, pick out like the more interesting things to talk about, and not only talk about them, but talk about the different translations and how much they differ in some of their meaning.
Yeah, that'd be fun. I mean, that's basically what historians do, right? They just like try to piece it together and go, what's the most accurate? Then they get a linguist involved. Like, what's the most accurate? But yeah,
right.
I mean,
and then you get some off the wall guy translating, ancient Sumerian into the sacred mushroom and the cross. You're like, what the
heck? Yeah, that exists too. We have to live with all of this in this era. But I think this is an interesting poem, and I do want to come back to it probably at a later date and look at different parts of it for sure, because I think this really, it just starts to really piece together, for me, the experience and the understanding that operative stonemasons were laying down like the ethical foundations and the philosophical groundworks that you can see how we evolved from it. Like there's pieces that are very emblematic of similar things that we do today. And it really makes me feel like this historical connection. And I've said before that one thing that brought me to Masonry is like the love to feel connected to the history, that you feel like you have like a direct like relationship with history to a certain extent. And I feel like when I read this old Middle English text in Old English and read it like a Mad Lib, I feel like I'm connecting to ancient brethren who held similar titles and similar beliefs and ideas. It's cool.
If you will entertain me for a second, I would like to say that you could probably consider this poem the cornerstone upon which our future Masonic edifice has been built.
And it not necessarily, like, to a certain extent, I agree with the sentiment, but you have to think that this was the first recorded, written version of probably what was an ideas that were already floating around amongst all of them, and this was just the first time someone put pen to paper on it and made it official. Right. And so it is like, you can tell that this is, from these ideas is where we came from, and there was probably... I don't know when we can say when was the first common ancestor, but I think this is definitely on that earlier line that we're building from.
I wouldn't disagree with you there that these were probably ideas that were circulating around for quite a while before they got put to paper, right? But we can only track things that we can prove, right? So this document is our proof that these ideas were circulating. So,
yep.
And probably allowed some of them to be circulated more / allowed people to go, well, it says right here in this thing that this is how we're supposed to be. So you can't argue with that because now it's here.
Yep. It's a good example of the historical that Masons are interested in. Are you able to help us finish off with the final line of the Regius Manuscript?
The very final line?
It's going to start with Christ in his high grace.
Oh, yeah. I got that part. Christ, then, of his high grace, save you both wit and space. Well, this book to know and read, heaven to have for your reward. Amen, amen, so mote it be. So say we all for charity.
That last line is a one-for-one Masonic line we still use today. So mote it be, so say we all in charity. That goes, I've heard that line before.
Yep, 100%. So it's, it's stuck around for a while.
I always have to deal with the idea. So there's the part of me that goes, all right, this is direct proof that we are a direct lineage. And the other part of me goes, or is it possible that in the 1700s, a separate group was reading this same thing and was like, oh, I'm using that. So like, we'll never know. That's going to always be in the back of the mind, right? Being like, wait. But if you think about it, this thing was buried until 1757. Well, it was donated in 1757, and 1717 was when the Grand Lodge was formed, so this might have still been in circulation before that. But it would make more sense to me.
It might have been.
that who's going to have access to these documents if you didn't have some connection to the stone craftsman as well?
Well, right. You would have to have the connection most likely, unless somehow one of them got out. But you'd have to think there's probably multiple of these documents, right? Probably not many, but probably a few. So, and we have one of them, which would be par for the course as far as, historical relics and recording goes, right? You don't get everything, and as far as a direct Masonic or direct lineage to operative Freemasonry, I think this would definitely point us in that direction. I'm not a huge believer in the whole Knights Templar origin story, but at the same time, I don't see why the two couldn't be interwoven somehow, right? Both it being an operative Freemasonry background, and then later on, some Templar influences got in there when Templars were on the run and hiding and everything else.
I mean, there's also the aspect, I don't really buy into the Templar one, is it as put forward by Born in Blood, at least. In that connection, I don't think there's a lot of historical. There's more like, but what ifs? But what if that means this? And you're like, yeah, but what if we're aliens? You know what I mean? But so to a certain extent, but I could see either a direct line from Templars, because the builders were working. Templars were spending a lot of money on building stuff, right? Yep. So there could be a friendly connection that could have put the ideas in, or the same idea that craftsmen later pulled from the ideas from their connections to build into their system, taking inspiration from Templary. So hard to say. That's one of those, we don't have enough information to really make a fully convincing historical argument, but an interesting maybe, but we just don't have the documents, We don't have the proof. We don't have the exact proofs yet.
I mean, as soon as I finish my studies in quantum physics and finish this time machine, I'll get us the answers. But
yeah, when you get your physicist buddies to tell us that geometry is not exact. Yeah, I would like us to revisit there's some other parts in this that I was pretty close to bringing in that I thought could be really cool, but there's just so much stuff in this thing. And we may have to do a second episode down the road when we need to fill a spot to look at some of these ones, because some of these ones they were hard for me not to fit in, but I knew I couldn't fit it in one episode to fit everything. And there's some really interesting stuff in this poem.
No, there's a lot to unpack in here. And I think, I think we should probably both take a little bit of time to do a little bit of research on different translations and such, and, kind of really dive into the meat and potatoes of it, and come back to it at some point.
Come back even more knowledgeable than our almost no knowledgeable that we are now. Only up from here.
We read it. That's
It's the proof in the pudding.
How did you guys prepare for this episode? We read it.
The difference between reading and analyzing it is really where you can tell the difference. That we read it, we didn't analyze it. We analyzed it in real time. You basically listen to our thought stream as we're like, we probably should analyze this closer, huh? Oh, different translation.
This is purely stream of consciousness.
Just like all of Albert Pike's books. Almost just as historical.
You're so right. That was great. You almost got another golf clap for that one.
You know how many Masons I made mad today? Making fun of Pike, making fun of Templars. I'm dead, man. All right. Well, that's a good place to wrap it. Amen, amen. So mote it be, say we all, for charity. But thank you, our listeners, for tuning in. Happy to be back together with Matt now that he's done from his travels. We have some more fun content coming out in the next couple of weeks. And make sure you're following us on social media, Facebook, TikTok. Check us out Instagram. On Discord. The Discord will give you nice updates when the episode comes out, an opportunity to chat. We'd be happy to hear from you guys in there. You can also email us at
timeforfellowship@gmail.com.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Have a good one.